Hello everyone. Today I will talk about the Iranian war. Whether a US attack on Iran was morally justified, and also whether it was a good idea to wage this war right now, um, even if it was justified. So there's several aspects here which we need to consider. Of course, one way it could be, well, have Iran, has Iran ever initiated aggression against US or US allies? Because that's like the proper justification for a war, right? As following some sort of non-aggression principle, we fight back against those who attacked us, right? That's the basic idea. I would say here it starts more or less from the very beginning, from the Iran hostage crisis. Began on November the 4th, 1979, when 66 Americans, including diplomats and other civilian personnel, were taken hostage at the embassy of the United States in Tehran, with 52 of them being held until January 20, 1981. This incident occurred after the Muslim student followers of the Imam's line stormed and occupied the building in the months following the Iranian Revolution. With support from Ruhollah Khomeini, who had led the Iranian Revolution and would eventually establish the present-day Islamic Republic of Iran. The hostage takers demanded that the United States extradite Iranian King Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who had been granted asylum by the Carter administration for cancer treatment. So yeah, that's actually even provided some context, because I know many people would say, well, Iranian regime was effectively defending themselves from American imperialism, right? Because this person, so he demanded to extradite the Iranian king, was at least claimed to be, and partially he was a US puppet, right? He was installed in Iran after US-backed coup in 1953. So, well, you could say maybe these actions were justified. However, I would say it's controversial because the aggression in some sense started before, as Iran nationalized the oil industry under the previous government. You see, the nationalization of Iranian oil industry resulted from a movement in Iranian parliament, Majlis, to seize control of Iran's oil industry, which had been run by private companies, largely controlled by foreign interests. The legislation was passed on 15th March 1951 and was verified by the Majlis, no, the parliament, Majlis, on 17 March 1951. The legislation led to the nationalization of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company and the formation of the National Iranian Oil Company. The movement was led by the Mohammad Mossadegh, a member of the Majlis for the National Front and the future Prime Minister of Iran. So yeah, this is just theft. Basically, you can't just take away someone's oil company. It essentially a result of a wrong view on the property rights. The idea that the resources belong to the people of the country and not to those who actually put some work to extract them from the ground. So they were basically in the wrong here. So US righteously intervened. Well, however, it's maybe disputed because it was an American company, and US was also uh, following its geopolitical interest. They were afraid of Soviet Union influence in Iran. Uh, yes, it's always kind of gets dirty when it gets to such kind of questions. But overall, like, what do you expect? If you nationalize something on this oil industry, yeah, expect retaliation. Yeah, so that's the beginning of it. But since then, Iran was actually exporting its Islamist aggression through its proxies. It funded many terrorist organizations. Well, yeah, basically asked AI to give me like an overview of all of them and the major terroristic attacks. The most famous are Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Houthis, and these guys I actually never heard of, but they're some sort of Iraqi militias. Yeah. Um, the most famous terrorist attacks, of course, this Beirut barracks bombing, which killed 241 US and French military personnel. And yeah, I guess it wasn't even the only one. Maybe there were more attacks in Lebanon. And again, it requires some context because I know many people would say that um, this actually happened as a result of an unjust war of Israel with US support against Lebanon, and um, was part of self-defense. The attack is essentially part of self-defense. Um, However, the war also wouldn't have started uh, without this Palestinian organization, PLO, I think, or some of these guys harassing Israel, um, which is usually kind of downplayed. Like, well, there was some attacks, but how much, like, is it really worth a war? Like, how serious it is? And Israel really went kind of too hard, and there was some kind of really unpleasant incidents happening during this war, like massacres, like Israel allied militias massacred some civilians, um, and so on. So yeah, this terrorist attack could be like a result of a backlash. Um, And the reason why this PLOs and Palestinians organization attacking Israel is because of Nakba, right? It always goes back to establishment of Israel. This organization, uh, well, basically they painted as some sort of revenge against the Israeli and what they did back then. The Nakba is essentially massive dislocation of Arabs during the Israeli War for Independence. And I will address this in a separate video because it's also very difficult and controversial topic. But overall, I disagree that Israel was in the wrong there. Um, well, at least, well, that's not completely accurate. I would say, yeah, it could have been done better, but the initiator of force still were the Arabs in this case. Um, they were offered these partition plans, they rejected them, um, and attacked Israel essentially. And of course, we could discuss more, well, who is here to impose these partition plans, and it goes back again to the nature of property land, especially in this case, land ownership. And I would say that the Israeli claim on the land was legitimate. But again, I'll make a separate discussion about it because that's not easy, and I would say Israel also made mistakes there. So I would say it's kind of dishonest to justify all the terrorist attacks committed by all Islamists against Israel as this kind of forever revenge. I would say it's just a fundamental clash of ideologies. The Western values against the jihad. I mean, the Islam. They're not really compatible, and I think it's part of the Islamist idea to constantly harass infidels and expand the Islamic rule, including violently. Um, so yeah, I mean there are bombings which go beyond just Middle East. Here is East here, Buenos Aires, Argentina. Uh, I actually never heard about these attacks before. Mostly the AI he cites Wikipedia article, but yeah, some of this attack are not even in Wikipedia article. This bombing um, in Buenos Aires killed 85 people. That's Wikipedia knows about. The second one, um, Israel embassy bombing in Buenos Aires, is not even listed here. So I thought maybe Grok just made it up, right? I mean, it's possible. So yeah, no, actually, no, it looks like it happened. The site is dedicated to preserving the memory of the first international terrorist attack in Argentina, which in 1992 destroyed the headquarters of the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, and to providing educational resources to address this topic in the country's educational institutions. And yeah, you see a little bit of history. On March 17, 1992, Islamic Jihad, the armed wing of the terrorist organization Hezbollah, rammed a Ford F-100 pickup truck into the Israel embassy building in Argentina, located at the intersection of Arroyo and Suipacha streets in the autonomous city of Buenos Aires. The attacks immediately destroyed the diplomatic mission, which had stood there for over 4 decades, and reduced much of the surrounding area to rubble, causing serious damage to a school, a nursing home, a church, and other nearby buildings. The attack left 29 dead and more than 200 wounded. Yeah, so I see, and Wikipedia doesn't even list it. So I guess there were more cases. But the one which I even listed here are very numerous. You see many countries: Bahrain, Denmark, France, India, um, Israel. Here the whole list. This we already talked about. Um, this is this militias in Iraq fighting against US, which I guess Grok also mentioned. Netherlands, Sweden, Thailand, Kenya, United States, murder plot against Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Venezuela. There's potential possible allegations of ties to Al Qaeda. However, I think it's kind of disputed. Mm, yeah, after several meetings facilitated by the Sudanese government in 1992, Iranian officials offered to provide Al Qaeda fighters with tactical training and intelligence cooperation in activities against the Israeli government. Iranian government also entered into agreement with Al Qaeda to supply the organization with financial support, weaponry, and explosives through the involved Lebanese Hezbollah group. Yeah, I mean that's interesting because I constantly hear over and over again things like, well, Al Qaeda is actually U.S. made and Israeli made organization. Well, I don't know. So it seems like it still receives support from Iran. Okay, another embassy bombing. Bombing of a ship. Yeah, federal judge Rudolph Contreras found both Iran and Sudan complicit in the 2000 bombing of the US called by Al Qaeda, stating that Iran was directly involved in establishing Al Qaeda's Yemen network and supported training and logistics for Al Qaeda in the Gulf region through Hezbollah. Um, yeah, two previous federal judges ruled that Sudan was liable with the attack, but this ruling is the first to find Iran partly responsible for the incident. Yeah, so I mean 9/11 obviously mentioned because it's Al-Qaeda. And yeah, well, okay, there's Taliban insurgency, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. Yeah, this is this Palestinian organization, and so on. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether we should study all with great details. I probably not gonna do it right now. Because it's kind of difficult, I would say, and the video will be really lengthy. But because in general, I would say people might respond as well. There is some risk of dying in this terrorist attack. What is there for me? I mean, it's not that high, and also you could say Iran obviously denies all this attacks and its involvement. So could we use it as legitimate justification for the war in Iran? And like, is it worth it? So yeah, I would say the second thing to have in mind is what's called this death decrees or fatwas issued against journalists. So what it does is, essentially makes some person a target to all possible Islamists in all the world, kind of sanctions their attack on him. The most famous case is this Salman Rushdie, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, British Indian author with journalistic contributions. So fatwa issued by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini on February 14, 1989, condemning Rushdie to death and calling on Muslim worldwide to execute him and anyone involved in publishing his book. The 15 Crore Foundation offered a multi-million-dollar bounty for what? His novel, Satanic Verses, was deemed blasphemous for allegedly insulting the Prophet Muhammad and questioning Islamic narratives. And what happened? Rushdie went into hiding under police protection for over a decade. The fatwa led to global protests, book burnings, and attacks. His Japanese translator was killed, his Italian translator stabbed, his Norwegian publisher shot, and 37 people died in Turkish hotel fire targeting his Azerbaijani translator. Rushdie was stabbed in the US 2022 by an attacker inspired by the fatwa, losing an eye and suffering several injuries. The fatwa remains in effect as Iranian officials claim it cannot be revoked posthumously. Multiple publishers and booksellers face threats of violence. And other similar fatwas, but this is mostly Iranians. However, there are also thwarted plots against journalists already in US and UK. And these are, I think, pretty famous. I think you've seen her even literally in some United Nations meetings speaking out against the regime. There's another one. Yeah, ITV reported that agents of Iran's top military force, the IRGC, offered 200,000 to people smuggler to try to kill Sabet and Farda for harass late last year in the British capital, when Iran International is headquartered. The British network said the plot was false because the people smuggler was a double agent who shared recording of the plotters with Western intelligence agency as well as with ITV. The network added that multiple officials verified the man's account. So yeah, why is it important? I would say because now the probability of dying actually depends on your actions. Effectively, it means that if you criticize Islam or mock it strongly, well, strong enough, you will basically die. So, to some extent, Iran enforces Sharia law on the territory of US and UK, and all across the world to to the best of its ability, so to say. And I think for me personally, that's the most important point because I value my freedom of speech uh, very strongly, highly. And if some Islamist country uh, want me to comply with the nonsensical religious nonsense, well, religious garbage coming from some sort of ancient gibberish like books, of course it drives me mad. And I think I would be really glad if they would be killed. The question is only how much you should pay for it, right? Is it a reasonable price? Um, yeah, I don't know, of course. Yeah, I wanted to try to have a look. I mean, how much the total US military operation would cost. And again, this would be with current military. I don't know how much you would pay on the free market, right? On the free market, everybody would be everybody will be making his own decision whether he would like to contribute or not, right? Nobody will be forced to fund wars against their will. Um, so it's hard to estimate how much money every person who is willing for this to happen have to pay. But if you assume, like for simplicity, that everybody in America pays, the same fixed price, which is kind of unlikely because it will be kind of distributed proportional to the income. In total, uh, for this war, we are getting something like, if we think it will cost around from 50 billion to 200 billion, it will be from like $500 to like $1,500 per person. So yeah, it's not that cheap. um, but if it's question of my freedom of speech, yeah, I would gladly pay it. Um, and also we should discuss more what are we actually getting for this money. It's not only restoration of my freedom of speech, but also potentially if the operation is successful and the new regime will come in and he would adhere to the Western values and ideas of individual freedoms and property rights. What we are doing is freeing the huge nation of 90 million people, which by the way has almost the highest IQ in the world, from this religious oppression, realizing its potential. And I wouldn't discount it or take it completely lightly. I know most people in the analysis never even talk about it, but huge free market nations, they bring benefits to your life. Like think about Japan after World War II. Um, it was freed from fascism, and now we have Toyota, Sony. Um, we have manga and anime, which are like new forms of art that you couldn't even thought about before. It was kind of hard to imagine that well, that something like that could be done. It's just it's not it's just a different culture, and its culture kind of get integrated into this global world. Um, I would anticipate something similar happening with Iran. Maybe we get new forms of art which we couldn't even dream of. Like Iranian manga, Iranian anime, I don't know, Iranian technologies. Another example would be Taiwan. For example, I recently learned, to my surprise, that the total export, total import of US from China and from Taiwan are actually approximately equal to each other. It's kind of crazy to believe, right? Because, well, we kind of get used to the feeling that, well, everything is made in China. Like, we just import from China everything, right? But actually, we import from Taiwan the microchips, right? For example, and that's like way more valuable product. And it turned out that it's kind of they kind of end up being equal in the total cost. So yeah, the free market gives you advanced technologies, and advanced technologies they bring huge value. So even small, tiny free market island nation produce you as much wealth, as much benefit as the whole China. So yeah, I would say if operation is successful for like this 50 billion, $200 billion, that's a lot of advantages. I would say it's a meaningful investment. Of course, most people are kind of worrying that this operation will not be successful, right? That what will happen is Iranian regime will maybe disintegrate into some sort of fighting militias. There will be Kurds, different minorities fighting with each other, and then US will have to bring in troops to support its puppet regime, and there will be constant harassment of US troops, massive casualties like in Iraq or Afghanistan, and huge spending on all of it for decades. So yeah, this is of course a valid concern, and it's like a really sad scenario. However, the main reply here is, well, in terms of US troops invasion, it's something you just should not do, right? I would say, okay, let's say they failed to topple the regime using airstrikes and Kurdish militias, which they use as support on the ground. Then the answer could be just, okay, don't go in. Let's say we kind of lost, but Iranian regime military capacity are still degraded, and it gives high chances for Iranian people to defeat it in the future. It's still not bad. Or let's say even if they decided to send troops on the ground, they again toppled the regime and then they withdrew. And if the regime collapses, the puppet regime collapses, well, so be it. Just the problem is just keeping forces there for a very long time because it's costly and it leads to mass casualties among US personnel. So yeah, that's the biggest mistake which they made in previous wars, and it's just important not to repeat this exact mistake. Just don't do how Joe Biden called it, nation building. Uh, it's not of the US concern. So of course, it's preferably if Iran would be free, but if they're just not ready, and they would just spiral into some kind of mess, that's be it. It's still a preferred geopolitical situation for the US. It's better to have a failed state consisted of disintegrated terrorist organizations than a consolidated Islamist regime which siphons resources from productive labor of multi-million people nation with the almost highest IQ in the world, and use this resource to export terror across the world. Um, So yeah, certainly it's still a better outcome. Um, and this last aspect which should be covered as well is what mainly was used as a excuse for the attack, um, is a nuclear weapon problem. Um, yeah, because that's more like a question of a strategy. Well, I would say we don't know for sure how close Iran was to the development of nuclear weapons. They were doing it for like 20 years, and Israel supposedly warned us about it all along, and nothing happened. So maybe it was just kind of a lie. However, uh, partially the reason why it took them so long is because Israel was actively interfering with the uh, nuclear weapons program. So they were thwarting all of the efforts as much as they could. Um, and still they were able to enrich uranium almost to the military grade, way above what was needed for, peaceful purposes. So yeah, it's clear that Iran have this nuclear weapon ambitions, and at the same time it makes explicit threats to US and Israel right from its parliament. Like it's not some sort of fringe groups. They're just shouting death to America in the parliament. Um, and I think based on the fact of how they act with all the terrorist organizations around the world, this threat could be taken seriously. Um, I don't know that there are many things which they could do. If they had nuclear weapons, they could smuggle it across the border of US and explode it somewhere secretly in Washington D.C. or New York, something like this. So of course there are some problems here. Um, it's more like the people who are saying this attack wasn't needed are saying something like, well, they haven't done it yet, so we need to do it now? What's the problem? Like you just exaggerated the threat. Yeah, and there is a one strategic component which should be mentioned here. So the most of the success of the current US military and Israel operation, which we witnessed in Iran, is due to these two fighter jets, that F-22 um, and F-35. This is the fifth generations aircrafts. The the biggest advantage is they are stealth aircrafts, and none of these Chinese or Russian provided air defense systems like S-300 and S-400 can detect and intercept them at this moment. So US has an edge technologically over Iran right now, and it could easily capitalize on this edge. As you can see, these aircrafts allow to establish full air superiority within like several days of fighting over Iran. But that you, I would say this shouldn't be taken lightly and it shouldn't be taken for granted. Well, as you can see, Russia is trying to build, let's say, fifth generation air complex, which would be an upgrade to S-400, which specifically designed to target F-35s, F-22s, and B-21s stealth fighter jets and bombers. And of course, well, we kind of suspect that they're kind of lying, exaggerating their claims. As you can see, unverified claims. While Russia claims it can hit F-35s, these claims are not independently verified. Analysts suggest that while the system has advanced long-range capabilities, consistently tracking and a moving stealth target is a significantly harder challenge. So yeah, So the claim might be just wrong or misleading. Yeah, but do we really want to just verify it during the battle, risking the lives of American pilots? How exactly it's gonna work? Imagine if Russia would supply this S-500 into Iran massively, and they would actually turn out to be effective. Then or the whole fleet of Israeli and US previous generation fighter jet will basically be rendered obsolete. They wouldn't be able to do anything anymore. Well, at least not really in a simple way. I mean, of course, if they use some sort of discombobulator, right? How Donald Trump called it, maybe yeah, it's like a secret weapon that could overcome everything, but that just wouldn't be already an easy walk. And my concern is, what if Iran would first acquire these systems and then build a nuclear bomb under their protection, uh, and will not be able to take it out that easily anymore. So this is kind of what worries me. So in some sense, I kind of try to make the case in favor of this war. I don't know, I haven't covered any technical details like congressional authorization and why it wasn't issued and why it was ignored and so on, because that's also important. You shouldn't set the precedence for unconstitutional wars, for sure. But in general, so far I just don't see that big of a problem, which a lot of right-wing people and left-wing people try to kind of make it off, make it into. I don't know. Maybe the time will show was it actually the right decision. But the history doesn't know the counterfactuals, so it's not clear. I would say it would be a wrong decision only if they would actually run into complete disaster. But for that, they have to send troops on the ground and then stay there for 20 years. And if they just blatantly repeat the same mistake, then, well, yes, they will get the same results. But I just hope they are not gonna do it this time. I hope they're just gonna decapitate the regime and leave it there. So yeah, this is the end. That's all I can say here, and I don't think it's that much. Might see you next time.